Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, on Saturday at noon, there's a game between the bottom Big Ten East team and the Indiana Hoosiers traveling at the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Who do I think is going to win this game? Let's break it down. Now, Indiana is 3-4 and 1-3 in the Big Ten to start this season, and Tom Allen had Indiana at the beginning of the season playing fantastic football. And they started out 3-0 with a win over Illinois at home 23-20 in week 1, and that win's looking better and better because Illinois has not lost a game since. And they're now ranked. And then they beat Idaho 35-22, and that was a good win because Idaho obviously took Washington State to the end and almost beat Washington State, and Idaho's just been playing better football this season. And then Indiana beat Western Kentucky in overtime 33-30, and Western Kentucky is a really decent group of 5. But it's been all downhill since the competition has stiffened, and they lost at Cincinnati 45-24. And this was a game that they were competitive in until close to half, and then Cincinnati blew it open, and then Indiana tried to get back in the game, and they couldn't. They lost at Nebraska 35-21 in a game that was tied at half, but then they kind of let Nebraska take over in the second half, and obviously Indiana did not have their top 2 receivers in this game. Then they lost to Michigan 31-10 in a game that they were competitive in at half, and then the offensive line could not help Connor Bazelak, who we'll get to in a minute, in the second half, and then Indiana just completely fell apart. And then they fired offensive line coach Darren Hiller, but then they lost to Maryland 38-33. In the last game against Maryland, Indiana played pretty well. And obviously the offensive line did better with new offensive line coach Rod Carey. Indiana played better in this game, but they just could not get the win. And obviously to his brother, Talia Tagovailoa, he got hurt, but Indiana could not stop Billy Edwards, and they just fell just short. But in that Maryland game, quarterback Connor Bazelak had 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and he had a 23-yard receiving touchdown. And Connor Bazelak is a good quarterback, but he's not mobile, and again, Indiana's offensive line does struggle to protect him, and when he has time he can pick teams apart, but sometimes when he doesn't have a lot of time he makes bad decisions and he throws interceptions. But he is a solid quarterback, and he obviously was a transfer from Missouri, so he was capable because he played well in the SEC. Running back Sean Shivers, the transfer from Auburn, had 32 yards on the ground and 10 receiving yards for Indiana against Maryland, and running back Josh Henderson, the transfer from North Carolina, had 20 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 60 receiving yards and a touchdown. He's more of a dual threat than Sean Shivers, but Josh Henderson has been an excellent surprise for Indiana, and he's been getting better week by week. Wide receiver Emory Simmons, the transfer from North Carolina, 99 yards, and wide receiver Cam Camper at 69 yards and a touchdown. Both are fantastic wide receivers. Wide receiver Donovan McCulley had the touchdown pass to Connor Bazelak because he used to be a quarterback, and he had 9 receiving yards for Indiana against Maryland. He's a really good wide receiver. Like I said, he used to be quarterback for Indiana, so he kind of does it all. And then on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker Aaron Casey, 7 tackles, and defensive back Brian Fitzgerald has 7 tackles for Indiana against Maryland. Indiana's defense has been a little up and down this season, but they do have a lot of veterans and a lot of talent on defense, but they probably need to play better, especially with Tom Allen calling the defensive plays this year. And Indiana's offense, as long as they protect Bazelak, can play. On the Rutgers side, Rutgers is 3-3 and 0-3 in the Big Ten to start this season. They have not won a Big Ten game. Greg Schiano, he used to be Rutgers coach in the 2000s, and he has done a lot of great things for Rutgers. But unfortunately, this season is kind of started that same way as Indiana. Rutgers started out great against their non-conference opponents. They beat Boston College 22-21, and that was a good win because you beat an ACC team on the road. Then they beat Wagner 66-7, and that was a good win. But then they won at Temple 16-14. But then after that, they've lost 3 in a row. They lost to Iowa 27-10. They lost at Ohio State 49-10, and then they lost to Nebraska 14-13. And their offense is completely sputtered. And in that Nebraska game, quarterback Noah Vedra had 133 yards and 27 rushing yards and a touchdown. Noah Vedra did not play at the beginning of the season, but Rutgers was winning. But now they're in Big Ten play. They really need him to play well. And Greg Schiano's kind of gone with a multi-quarterback approach. He also used quarterback Evan Simon in the Nebraska game, and he had 100 yards and 3 interceptions, and he really cost them in the Nebraska game because he threw bad passes. If Noah Vedra had played the whole game, who knows, maybe Rutgers would have won. Running back Samuel Brown the fifth at 63 yards on the ground for Rutgers against Nebraska. He's a good running back. Obviously, Rutgers' rushing attack all goes to the offensive line as well, and I think Rutgers' offensive line is a little bit better than Indiana's offensive line, so there you go with the rushing numbers being better than Indiana's. Wide receiver Aaron Cruikshank at 71 yards for Rutgers against Nebraska, and do-it-all Johnny Langan had 9 rushing yards and 19 receiving yards. He used to be a quarterback for Rutgers, but now they use him in the receiving game and the running game, and they do a lot of wildcat with him, so he is a good player for Rutgers. And on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker Deion Jennings at 7 tackles, defensive back Avery Young at 5 tackles, and linebacker Tyreen Powell at 2 tackles. Rutgers' defense has played well at times this season, especially in the Nebraska and Temple games. But at other times, like against Ohio State, and even against Iowa, they did give up a lot of points. But the problem for Rutgers, the most part, has been their offense. If Noah Vedra can get healthy and reclaim the starting quarterback job completely for Rutgers, I think their offense will improve. But with the dual quarterback system and Noah Vedra not being super healthy, their offense has really struggled this season. So who do I think is going to win this game? This game is at Rutgers, and when you have a game between two teams, normally, like I said, that are usually very, very similar, I usually pick the home team. But there are certain advantages that Indiana has in this game. I think Indiana has a better offense than Rutgers because Rutgers in the last few games has put up 10, 10, and 13. And Rutgers is not scoring a lot of points. Maybe if Noah Vedra plays more in the game against Indiana, they'll do better. But they have not done good on offense. And Indiana's been putting up more points. I know against Michigan they only put up 10, but they put up 21 and 24 and 33 against Cincinnati, Nebraska, and Maryland. Their offense is doing better. Indiana's defense is capable, and with Rutgers' offense struggling, I think Indiana's defense is going to be able to stop Rutgers' offense. And I think also Indiana has a more confident team still, even though they've lost 4 in a row. I think Indiana's losses have shown that they've been more competitive than Rutgers, even though they almost beat Nebraska, but Nebraska's really struggling as well. Rutgers does have a bye, and I think that helps Rutgers in this case here because when you do have a bye, they can get things figured out. Maybe they'll help Noah Vedra figure things out for Rutgers. But I have Indiana going on the road and winning at Rutgers 31-24. Again, I think Rutgers can win this game, but I don't think Rutgers is as common as Greg Schiano does have a solid team, but their offense is really struggling. Their defense is good, but I think Indiana's offense is going to be able to protect Bazelite now. Their offensive line is a little bit better, do just enough over Rutgers' defense, and I think Rutgers' offense is not going to be able to score enough on Indiana's defense, and I think Indiana's going to win at Rutgers 31-24. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below whether you think Indiana or Rutgers is going to win this game and why, and I will see you next time.